Hello and welcome everyone to episode 100 of One Piece at a Time, the One Piece read-through podcast where we read and discuss 5 chapters of the One Piece manga each and every week. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host and freelance letterer at Shonen Jump, Brandon Bovia. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm, of course, Brandon Bovia, letterer of manga like Dragon Ball Super and Kaiju number 8 and many, many more. And I know, like... It's the 100th episode, and that is
100
worth
episodes.
Celebrating.
Woo! Right?
That's awesome. And I mean, what better way to ring in episode 100 than to look back, right? To be like, here's where we came from. You know, we've come so far. We have to do it in perhaps the worst way possible.
Yep. In case you missed the title somehow, this is another movie episode, and the first one of these that I have not seen before. I just never took the chance to watch this movie number 7 episode of Alabasta, The Desert Princess and the Pirates.
I think this is movie 8 actually, but
that's right. You're right. Movie 8. I apologize. Yeah, that's how. Is it sad that I'm begging for movie 7 back?
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way. Okay. So the core thing of this one is, with movie 8, it's a retelling of the Alabasta arc and everything for good or ill that brings. And the thing is, it's mostly ill because, I mean, typically we do a plot summary with this thing, but there's no need. It's just Alabasta.
I think specifically it is like the part when they get to like the Alabasta mainland itself. They speed run all of that up to like the fights.
Yes. They have a slight introduction with Bon Clay where they meet up with him and then speed run to Alabasta itself.
Yeah. To me, it feels more like you're kind of cramming like act 2 and 3 of a story into 90 minutes.
Pretty much. Some quick notes before we get into this. This movie was released on March 3rd, 2007. Once again, another March release, 1 year after the previous one. Released between chapters 446 and 447. So we, that's why we're recording after 450, smack dab in the middle of Thriller Bark. Oh God, right after Nami in the bath.
Yeah. Although the fascinating thing just because I have the wiki page up, but this actually has, for the first time, a U.S. release date.
Yes.
Mere 1 year later, which this is like one of the first things Funimation did after they took over from 4Kids. Like, I think they still, like, they were in East Blue at this point, but I guess they were like, hey, we're just going to grab this movie that just released in Japan.
I think they did a 3-pronged thing where they were re-recording all the stuff from the beginning of the anime, but also because it was airing on TV at the time, they just picked up right with Skypiea. So they were recording Skypiea and the beginning at the same time, and also this movie because I think they got the rights to it and just like do that pronged attack.
Yeah.
And this might have been one of the first things to release. I can't remember, but I remember the funny thing is despite never watching it, I do own it on DVD.
Oh my God.
I just never bothered to watch it just because I just never got around to it for whatever reason. Because I was like, I want to check out the English cast.
Yeah, and I think I can respect the novelty of like, hey, this is officially, like, you can watch the subbed version, and you can own that officially, which I imagine in 2008, like I can relate to that.
Yeah. As far as where it was when the anime was airing, right between episodes 298 and 299, which is basically right after Sanji defeated Jabra.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Just to give a bit of an idea on that whole thing. But yeah, this was the first English release, even though I did watch it in Japanese just because I grew up watching One Piece in Japanese. I like the English cast. I'm just used to the Japanese cast.
Absolutely. And that's one aspect of that I really appreciate, obviously because we're covering the manga. But like, I really like Vivi's voice actress. I think like she put in a heck of a performance in the TV anime version of this arc, and so that was something I realized while watching this. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Like, she puts 110% into some of those really emotional scenes, even though there's no emotion behind anything that this movie does. But
yeah, I think that's the big thing we need to talk about with this movie is because it is such a speed run, it's trying to go, especially in the first part of it, to go from emotional beat to emotional beat. Like, okay, we start out with her flying with Pell, then we go to her waking up on the ship and she's already trying to save the country. So, you're trying to get into that mindset. And then you find Bon Clay and realize, oh God, he's part of Baroque Works and working for Crocodile. And then then immediately cuts to them arriving and not even going into the city, because of course they cut out Ace, but they're already heading towards Yuba and doing the emotional beat with Yuba and him being around. It's just, it's such a fast forward moment there. You have no time to breathe, but they are trying to hit those emotional beats, but they don't land. Ever.
Yeah, and I think I'm sympathetic because I don't think it would be really hard for this stuff to land anyway. Because again, this is all like you've removed all of the buildup. You're just thrown straight in there, and even as like God, I love Alabasta, but like this arc made me question my love for it just because of how incoherent and incomprehensible it just kind of like it's like this is all the stuff I remember loving, but it is just presented in a way that like just
there's no impact. There's no impact. Yeah. We don't have that buildup of Vivi's growing desperation, the fact that things keep going wrong, how the Straw Hats gradually make ground and just keep making progress. And the thing is, occasionally there are good cuts. Like the funny thing is, I feel like they should have cut even more in order to bolster some of the bigger scenes.
After like kind of sitting on it for a while, I think if they were going to mangle all of like the Straw Hats individual fights, just cut them. Like they're awful. They serve no purpose here.
Fight outside of maybe Luffy versus Crocodile works.
Yeah, they're. I think they're all ruined. I came out liking Luffy versus Crocodile okay because it by far has the most time dedicated to it, to the point where we were talking last night, just like I don't understand why this movie exists. I don't understand who it's for, because it's certainly not for newcomers, and it's not if you're a fan of the anime or the manga, you're just going to be like, well, wow, they really like it would be cool to see all of these iconic scenes with like a higher animation budget. You don't get that necessarily. Like Luffy versus Crocodile is probably the only one where I was like, it does look reasonably better than the anime version.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that the movie allows is that the crowd shots actually look pretty good. Like you get a sense of the scale. CG some of the CG is not great, but
but I respect what they're going for, because a lot of those in the TV anime, they're stills. It's like a bunch of stills because you're like, animating like thousands of guys on horseback would be ruinous for anybody. And I think part of the CG that doesn't like, I almost wonder how this looks on Blu-ray, because I think like with streaming bit rates, like you have all of these tiny little particles, like Crocodile's sand is in CG and it looks horrible just because of the compression.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, I'm not going to go out and buy a Blu-ray of this movie, but it did have me going like, this movie is available for you to watch on Netflix. This is the first one of these that we're watching that is officially available, which is great, but like, it's a stinker.
Yep, it certainly is. But as you were saying, the animation is not that much better.
It's like a side grade compared to the anime. Like it's a little bit better, but like not what you would expect. I was really thinking like, my memories of this movie were that it was like, oh, this looks like a lot better.
The modern TV animation of One Piece is better than this movie.
Yes. Okay, well, that's not fair, because like the modern TV animation is better than the movies we have now.
That is true. I'm trying to think of like what would be the better way to handle this movie, because right now this is Cliff Notes 101. It's like, here's all the big points from the actual arc, let's make sure we hit all those beats. So we got to show we got to show Yuba. We got to show the encounter with Toto. We got to show a little bit of with Koza. We got to show each of the fights, at least snippets from the fights for each of those Straw Hats. Just each of those bits, and there are very slight changes, but it's all to take away the mystique of certain things.
Which, I was disappointed when we did some of those changes.
It's like we need our bandages to make sure we don't get confused with Bon Clay, and it has the X underneath. They just show right away, which I was upset at first, but then I realized it doesn't matter because they're not going to utilize it whatsoever.
Yeah, they completely cut the part of those fights where you're like, oh, which one's the real one? So it's like it's literally just to show, it's really just to tie back to the end, where they're all leaving. But even then, I feel like you could have just not shown it. And I feel like that moment, like, I don't know. It again, it's just like, if you're a reader or, a viewer of the anime, you already know that that's coming. So, like, yeah, I guess why hide the mystery? But, like, why mess with things that, don't really need to be messed with? It's baffling.
Yeah, it would make more sense to... See, the thing is, this should not have been a straight up adaptation. This should have taken its own liberties.
Yeah, and that actually got me thinking. Like, I kind of wonder if this movie should have started when like with the bomb. They should have started kind of like the part of the, like, basically the final act of the arc, and that final challenge, and then you could have weaved all of the Straw Hats' individual fights throughout. Because I feel like giving the movie a more singular focus rather than just like this mishmash arrangement of scenes you might remember. Like, it has no flow, and it really doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have a core thesis, and it can't, because it is the last 60%, of like 50 chapters of buildup.
Yeah, I keep trying to think of where you'd cut, what you'd cut in order to make it flow better. But even that's really tricky. That's why I think it almost needs a complete rewrite, because the X on the wrist as they say goodbye is iconic. You cannot have that scene. So that I understand why they kept that. But the reason for it was gone. It was never utilized. It's a loaded gun that's never fired.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I think starting with Bon Clay makes sense, but change out the fight so the Bon Clay is much more mysterious, or you have to actually utilize that in some way.
Yeah.
Combine some of them so they're actually together and doing multi-fights. Do something interesting with that in some way, maybe. That Bon Clay is making it difficult. Like, I think making Bon Clay more centralized would be a good idea, because you could utilize that more and have that significance until they finally are able to figure out or reveal that, just because there's no payoff until the very, very end.
Yeah. And I think it would have been cool too to like have this kind of weird alternate version, because the manga exists and the anime exists as a faithful-ish adaptation. And it's like, if you're going to cram it into 90 minutes, you might as well kind of like, if this is for the people who have already experienced those things, keep us on our toes, and like, that's an interesting little like twist. Like, it would be one thing if the TV anime never existed and it was like, this is the first time Alabasta is getting adapted, so we have to keep it beat for beat. But like, no, you were already, doing another riff on something that already exists. So like, the idea of combining fights, or like, if you don't really have that much time anyway, so why are you even like implying that the Straw Hats all kind of had their own individual encounters? Like, it doesn't make any sense. You are reminding me that you're doing things worse than the things that already exist.
Yes, every step of the way. Not a single fight is improved in any way. Like, to the point that they feel so slavishly faithful that they show Bon Clay putting on his swan feet to extend his reach, but they never show him extending his reach or what makes them so dangerous.
Yeah, it's like, here's the thing you want. It's like, jangling keys in front of a baby. Like, here's the thing, but you don't have any sort of meaning or significance about the thing.
Yeah.
It feels like the most kind of corporate slop version of what the story is.
Pretty much. Like, I'm trying to think, and the first expansion on what was in the original that I think we encountered was, I'm pretty sure, Nami revealing her dancer outfit to the crab to make it work better, because it felt so much more like, oh, boob jiggle.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that was new. Yeah, I definitely, you can tell it's the same kind of like character designer, animation director from the last movie, because it really is just like, well, it's not, again, my same gripe with movie 7. It's not even like good cheesecake.
The thing is, it does not feel as egregious as, like, they're not bouncing all over the place. It's definitely not as egregious as the previous one. But there's also like an extra scene that's not needed of Nami unwrapping Miss Doublefinger from her contraption and basically groping her all over. It's like, what the?
Yeah. It's like a blink and you miss it thing, but you're just like, what?
Why is that scene there? Why? There is no need for that scene. Granted, maybe they felt they needed to have something like that because, and I'm shocked by this, there was no happiness punch.
Oh, yeah. Wait. No, yeah, you're right.
And the other funny thing is, like, they're willing to make changes. Like, they had to cut Igarim. Like, Igarim does not make sense to be here. There's no emotional weight to him coming back, because how do you know who Igarim is? So who takes Vivi's place in front of the crowd? Igarim's wife.
Right.
And it still gets the same thing point across, which, I think if there are more changes like that where they were able to combine characters, slim characters down, the movie could have worked.
Yeah, I think if you just need to focus on like the singular plot of like the Straw Hats kind of, coming together to help a princess save her kingdom. Like, I think it needed to centralize on something. And I kind of thought, because the film opens with like the shot of, Vivi riding on Pell in the flashback. So I was kind of like, oh, is like Pell going to be kind of sort of like the emotional crux of this movie? Because obviously, his sacrifice is coming and all that stuff. So like it could be like, I thought they were going to kind of like bookend it or make him kind of like, maybe not the focal point, but like, give the movie something to focus on or to flow through. But there's really not.
No, they're not at all. Like they show him getting shot as like a quick flashback to show why he hadn't.
Yeah, which I was my jaw was on the floor. I was like, of all things, like, how do you skip that?
I don't know. It's I don't know. I'm going through, like, my writer's brain is trying to kick in and see what I could do, like what you can do to really fix this. And I think, either having Pell as a focal point to connect with Vivi, because they kept, they had a bunch of stuff here where you just notice where, like, at some point I almost wondered if this was a recut version of what there was already in the anime, just to keep budget down.
I was wondering that at some points too, because like,
they show Koza with a bullet wound and they never show him receive the bullet wound.
That's right. Yeah, they're just like my animator brain kind of was like, there are some shots that do look really close to the anime version, and you kind of like, they're like the style is kind of clashing because it sort of has that flat look of like the early era of the anime, but like some shots are clearly like redrawn with I can't remember the character designer's name, but like it is very much kind of like the 2007 late Enies Lobby to Thriller Bark like era One Piece, but like it sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And there are a couple of shots that are like just framed and storyboarded weirdly, that it's like, there's this I forget I forget which fight it is, but there's this one shot, it might be Sanji's or Zoro's, where it's like randomly like the focal point is like the top 1/5 of the screen, and I'm just like it feels like they're taking material that was like storyboarded for 4:3 and is like, well, now we have to reanimate it in 16:9. So, and some of the, I noticed some background shots that looked like, like the background looked like it was recycled from the anime. I don't know. It could all be from the ground up, but I could just be going crazy. I did not care enough to look into how this movie got made. And there are obviously things that are reanimated from the ground up. But there are just random little bits here and there that's just like, this feels like a vestige of something else.
Yeah. And I'm while we were talking, I was trying to check something. I'm still trying to find it to see if I can confirm. Yeah, okay. I found it I was looking through the chapters of the manga because I was again trying to think of a focal point, and they didn't emphasize the relationship between Vivi and Luffy as much as they could have when they have an element in here that they do not call attention to. I'm pretty sure I'm trying to find a scene that really shows it. Okay. Yeah. So, do you notice what Luffy did here that I'm pretty sure he did not do in the original?
Oh, what's that?
In regards to Vivi.
I don't know.
He gives her his hat.
Oh, that's right.
I'm looking at the manga. He does not give her his hat.
Yeah, I thought about that while I was like in a weird, like, just, again, blinking you miss it. I was like, was that always there?
Yeah, yeah, because she has it throughout the whole clock tower thing where she's trying to find the bomb, and that's what I was looking through. I was like, wait a second, I'm pretty sure that was not there, and
that's actually huge.
Yeah, that is huge. He never gives her his hat in the manga, and I feel like there's a way that you could have shorthanded that to really show the connection between these two and why the trust. I think we could have easily cut the fight the two have. Where he's like, use us our friends. You're naive for not wanting anybody to die and all that stuff. I feel like that could have easily been cut, and instead have, Nami nearby when Luffy gives her his hat, and she's there to tell him about why that's such a treasure to her and like what it means to have that faith that she can save her kingdom or something like that, and really play off the emotions of the returning viewers that like, oh, that's so good, that type of thing.
Yeah, because that is something that is treated with so much more weight anytime it happens in the original manga. The fact that they Luffy's just like, here, take this. You're just like, wait, huh?
Yeah.
What? It's like, what?
Exactly.
What does that mean?
Exactly. Like that's the thing. There's some interesting elements here where they could have expanded, like got rid of some, expanded upon others. I don't know. The thing is, it requires such a massive rewrite that I don't. Yeah, it would not be easy to do.
I think this whole project was kind of flawed from the jump.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing they added in was they had tried to do a bit more with Robin, even though
a little bit,
even though there really isn't a whole lot. Like they had her have some internal dialogue about. Oh, it does show the location of the Pluton, and then that way they can have a shorthand of like her lying to Crocodile.
Yeah, yeah.
But then also a flashback to Saul.
Yeah, which that took the wind out of me. I mean, that was like right at the end of the movie because they added a scene of her basically like oh, she's gonna plotting to sneak on the Mary. And that's
like Luffy saving her life makes her think is like, are these my friends somehow?
Right. Yeah. Which is, I think, really silly.
Yeah.
A bit of a jump. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of jumping the gun, but it's like, I feel like that really does sum up this movie in a nutshell of kind of like calling back to really emotionally important things without any of the weight.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just like, again, dangling those keys like, oh yeah, you remember Saul? Remember how sad he made you? Here he is. Just like, okay, all right.
Or like the fight with Crocodile is mostly fine. Hey, and good on them. They got rid of the second phase of the fight. They got rid of the one in the kingdom. Good job. That makes sense. You don't need to do all of that when you're working with movie times. But it was like, okay, I was getting close to the point where like Luffy's grit and determination, that is starting to creep through that enough that you can like get behind it.
Yeah.
But then they go ahead and get rid of the impactfulness of what makes Luffy punching Crocodile at the end to finish the job so cool, where he's beating through steel concrete through the roads and talking about how thick it is because they're so far underground. And instead it just goes up through a tower, which maybe is more visually interesting, but not nearly as impressive.
I feel like with this movie's air quotes budget here, I feel like it still would have been really cool to see them reimagine. Like, how could this look, with like fancier digital animation and CG, like watching Luffy punch Crocodile straight through, the ground, or maybe by that point in the production they were just like, we don't have the money for this, so just like shoot him through a tower or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And then have him randomly apprehended by Chaka and Koza.
Yeah. What? I mean, I do like the animation is quite nice for the finale. I will say that. I think
does step up
the end of the fight. It does look good, and it looks good in the anime too, in the TV series. But it is that was sort of the one thing I remembered about this movie. I was like, oh yeah, the version of Luffy beating Crocodile was cool, but yeah, it of course you can't have a nice thing without it taking away something else cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a shame, and I know that the other Straw Hats would have very little to do if you didn't show their fights, but I think that's why it needs a rewrite so they would get something to do. Find ways to use their talents elsewhere outside of fights, or maybe just keep one of their fights.
Yeah, I think because what they did here does disservice to both ways, because it's like, yeah, the other Straw Hats are doing something, but like you're seeing them in like chopped up like 5-second chunks, and it's like, do you as a viewer really feel satisfied seeing like bits and pieces of these iconic moments reimagined in HD? Like, not, I would argue not really. So just change it. And again, if you're not able to do a significantly better job than the TV series, like I think they did with Luffy versus Crocodile, then like just don't bother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think of any other moments that really stuck out as significantly different, or something to that effect. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, the Robin reading the poneglyphs again reminded me of something very funny about that scene that we won't get to talk about for like 3 years. But
of course.
Yeah, of course. But yeah.
Oh, I remember something that annoyed the hell out of me by the time the movie ended.
What's that? Constant
freeze frames.
Oh yes, I wanted to talk about that because I feel like it's a lost art, like, because I'm a 90s kid. I grew up with anime of that era, and that's like such a significant like stylistic thing of like, the frame the cell turns into a painting to like show a big moment, emphasize a big moment, and it's usually like at the end of the episode or like at the end of a really like hype sequence. It's just like, it's like a zinger, it's a spice. And this movie just like throws the spice all over the, I don't know, whatever they weren't cooking here. And like, they're all randomly like 2 or 3 seconds too long. And then they just like fade back into, 2D animation. And you're just like, why was that there? In a movie so strapped for time, they were like, let's hang on these really like randomly placed stills. It drove me bonkers.
I kept seeing it happen. It's just, why?
Yeah, no, I get, yeah. Why is all I really have.
Especially when you're so thin on time. Like, I know that like they're trying to like emphasize certain things, but it's also like, why are you bothering when you only have so much time? Stop doing that when you could get other things done.
Yeah, that one's a really, I feel like that's a big like directorial miss.
Yeah,
it's just like you didn't have to do that. And it's a bad choice.
You know what might be the worst choice, my least favorite choice out of all of it? The complete overemphasis on Luffy grabbing Crocodile's wrist.
Yeah, I feel like that one alongside the mark on the wrist is like those are the two big like no-nos.
Like, you could have easily just sort of left it subtle, and then like because Luffy doesn't bother using the water this time. He just decides to use his blood, which kind of kills the emphasis on. He uses the water a little bit in the first fight against Crocodile just to get it rehydrate his limb, but like it mostly uses the blood. But again, that's a cool moment. That's a cool reveal, and they decide to not use that as a cool reveal. It's just like, oh yes, because of this whole thing that we totally emphasize way too much, I know that I can punch you with my blood.
And again, like I said earlier, I feel like if you're somebody who's read the manga or watched the anime, you already know that it's coming, but it feels like it's spelling out something that we already know, which just it kind of feels like them kind of giving up the ghost a bit.
Yeah.
So frustrating.
It is extremely frustrating. I'm trying to think of something nice to say, like, because there are some smart cuts in this, like getting rid of Igram makes sense. Getting rid of Smoker makes sense. Getting rid of Ace makes sense.
Yeah. I think those are kind of the essential ones. Though it does kind of make the Marine thing at the end of the movie really just kind of like, oh, what? But I mean, but by that point I was so done that I just didn't care.
Yeah, very much checked out. Oh yeah, the Supersonic Bird Squad showing up out of nowhere with no circumstance. Like I think that's the thing that stands out to me so much is that I'm trying to put my head in as a new person. It's like, who the hell are these? What the heck's up with this? Why is this a thing? What's going on here? It's so disjointed.
Yeah, and that's I've had experience of like showing people One Piece movies who have like no sort of like indication of what the franchise is. For the most part, I think it works. You know, like you show somebody movie 6, you know, show someone Baron no Matsuri with no knowledge of One Piece, they'll get through fine. Like
yeah, or even Dead End Adventure, like you're in a pirate crew and you have this thing going on. They're trying to win this contest. Yeah, that makes sense. You don't need to go anything beyond that. But because Alabasta is so huge, you can't squeeze it into 90 minutes. Yeah,
you just can't. And it does make me worried for when we cover the other ones. So for those who don't know, a lot of arcs have gotten this treatment by this point of sort of they kind of become like the episode of format, and the next film is another one, and then I think after that point they all become TV specials.
But yes, and I don't know if we'll cover the TV specials. I don't know if we need to worry about that.
yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But like, I think there's a level of I think I kind of lost what my original point was, but
the thing is,
they all it's a hard ask, I think, to cram that much material into 90 minutes.
Yeah, but the nice thing about the next movie, which I am aware it's an adaptation of the Drum Island arc, that's a much shorter arc. It is a lot more simple, a lot less moving pieces. That feels like it could be adapted into a 90-minute movie and not lose too much.
I know Skypiea has one. Enies Lobby has one. It might be Water 7 and Enies Lobby. I hope it's just Enies Lobby. I've not seen that one. I know Arlong has one. I have seen that one once. I don't remember how they did. I don't remember how they did it, but it does bring me back to like the discussion we had about the One Piece last week, where it does kind of make me pine for a One Piece Kai. Like it does kind of boggle me a little bit that we have so many arcs that have been like completely reanimated and overstuffed into their format, and now we're getting like a full from the ground up remake of, you know, East Blue and potentially more, where it's just like we have over 1,000 episodes of anime footage, and like if you used the TV anime version of like the Alabasta arc, it wouldn't look super great, but like you could take that material and like recut it into probably a good like 2, maybe 3 movies, and I think it would actually read really well. Yeah,
more than likely.
So
quite easily.
And as far as I know, they're like, we don't have anything like that. We have One Piece, which is a fan project, but like it is really weird to me to think that like we don't have anything that's just like a recut of the existing material, which seems like the least amount of work you could do to just like cut out all of the fluff that the anime adds, and like you'd actually have something that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think that's really what it comes down to. It I just don't understand. I think the thing that we kept coming back to when we were talking to each other was this movie is pointless. It's not for newcomers. It's not for established fans. It's just there's no reason behind its existence.
Yeah, certainly. And I think I would maybe even let a lot of this go if it just blew my mind.
If it just looked good.
Yeah, you're just like,
oh
hey,
my gosh, look at that. That's so cool type thing.
Like, this is a garbage way to experience Alabasta, but like it looks sick. I'm a 12-year-old at heart. I can accept a lot of stuff like that. But like you didn't even get that.
No.
So it's just like
No,
okay.
but because I even said to you, it's like, well, I hope maybe the fights will be animated well, and then they get to him like, oh.
Yeah, there's that, like, obviously, again, I've praised Luffy versus Crocodile enough, but like, there's like one shot of Zoro versus Mr. Wood where I was like, oh yeah, it's like that looks cool, and then that was it.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, I don't have much else to say about this one. I figured this would be short. It's a shame that our 100th episode ended up being such a nothing.
It's really funny, but in a really just sad, kind of cosmic, messed up kind of way.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's the best way to put it. But man,
it's a new era. After this, we're in Thriller Bark. I want to say, if not the next movie, then the movie after that. We're getting into some really quality stuff. So this might be the last, like, really, really awful one.
I hope so. Like, I'm trying to remember what. Oh yeah. Movie 10, we start getting into the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, once we get there, it ain't so bad.
No, like, oh gosh, that seems like such a jump up. But I'm curious because I know the next one also is much more liberal with what they do.
Yeah.
It makes me much more curious.
Yeah, the one time I watched it, I guess we'll get there when we get there, of course. But like, I remember being kind of like, oh, that's weird. But now in current year, I think I'm much more willing to accept, like, yeah, the manga and the anime already exist, so like, do something funky with it, like, get weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think with that, we've said all we wanted to say about One Piece episode of Alabasta. Thank you so much for listening, and you can find more of my ramblings and stream VODs over at BitNerd Games on YouTube or BitNerd with an underscore at the end on Twitter. And Brandon, where can everyone find you at?
I'm at Brandon Bovia on Twitter, talking about anime, manga, games, and my job. I don't know why I'm bringing this up specifically, but if you follow me on Twitter, I have begun a rewatch of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. So if you want my random dispersed thoughts about that show, then follow me on Twitter for that.
There you go. Definitely do.
I'll have work stuff to talk about, I promise.
Yes. Oh, don't worry. We'll have plenty to talk about as we go along. And hey, if you'd like to help us out more, you can support the podcast over at patreon.com/Derek Bittner. That's DERRICKBITNER to listen to the next episode ad-free 3 days early. And make sure to return next time as we discuss chapters 451 to 455 of One Piece. It's back to the Midnight Hunt. Let's do it. So until then, my friends, bye.
Remember to take life one piece at a time.
I suppose it's the perfect bluff for someone who's about to drop dead, but it means nothing.
I am the man who's going to be king of the pirates!